Every Zelda anniversary, apart from ironically the 10th one, has had significant game releases. After 2011, it was new games, and truth to be told, 2026 could reveal a new one, as we'll get back to towards the end of the video. With that said, from the 25th anniversary, we saw a turn to remakes/remasters for the anniversaries. But what will be the 40th lineup? The answer could be extensive, but one of the games that might see a return is the main 25th and 35th anniversary release, Skyward Sword. From the SD original through HD remaster to final Nintendo Switch 2 edition 4K upscale. As this origin story of the first Zelda, Link and the Master Sword, remains the only Nintendo Switch released Zelda game without an upgrade on Nintendo Switch 2. The better question though is, why would we want this to happen? By finally adding the hidden in the credits Zelda's Quest, and thus making the Switch 2 edition of the game also available physical. Or simply we could see a free graphical and performance update to the Switch version as we saw last year to the Link's Awakening remake and Echoes of Wisdom. Personally, I will always cheer on bringing back cut content, but either way, there could be a reason to play Skyward Sword again after 5 years. Speaking of cut content, it has been 15 years since Ocarina of Time had its 3DS quest with the Master Quest. Which is a problem, as this game with an absolutely splendid Final Battle Lego set in March isn't even in proper HD, but stuck on the Nintendo Switch 2 with the far from ideal N64 Switch Online version. Now, with Nashville's remarks last year about a remake developed by Nintendo or a studio owned by them, and that it will not be seen in 2025, there is hope for a repeat of 2011 and the grand 25th anniversary for the 40th anniversary. The return of Ocarina of Time after a longer gap than the 12.5 years that was the case from N64 to 3DS. And besides, the Nintendo Switch 2 needs a graphical Zelda showcase title until we get to play the next new open-air Zelda a few years from now. But Hyrule again? Well, yes. But what is different is that this one has two phases, present and future, where you play as a child and adult. And this goes especially for Castletown, a settlement that is only really explorable as a child, as in the adult state it is very close to what we saw in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. With an Ocarina of Time 4K remake, where the restoration of the cut from the original jump button could be used like in open-air Zelda, plus walking around and potentially even climbing up to the top of the iconic Temple of Time. More new content could also be found outside the town gates, as Hyrule Field could get more interesting with new points of interest. This goes both for the child, but more so the adult section of the game, where we know that horseback combat with sword and shield had to be cut. But the greatest potential is the restoration of one or more cut dungeons, plus the removal of loading in Hyrule outside of these. And Ocarina of Time is no doubt the 3D Zelda game that has the greatest potential for growth. But what are we really celebrating? The original 2D top-down Zelda. And yes, we had a new one in 2024, the first one where we played fully as the title princess, but who's to say what Zreo has been doing since? As we all know, Tears of the Kingdom was originally supposed to release in 2022, but then had to be delayed to spring 2023. Now, we don't know this for sure, but what if Echoes was already finished at this point, and Zreo got the green light to make the next top-down game already in 2023? Then it might be already getting close to completion. And if this is true and a new adventure as Link awaits, then it would replace anything else Zelda this year. On the other hand, under 3 years might be simply too little for a brand new canon entry, but there are other options for 2D Zelda, including copying what Mario did for its 30th anniversary, so Maker, but Zelda. We already had the Link skin in Super Mario Maker 2, and even before that the chamber dungeons of Link's Awakening Switch. And that's the thing. Zelda has been a dungeon crawler since the beginning, and Maker is a way of testing the creativity of the players with at least 3 templates: NES, SNES, and, well, Switch with Echoes of Wisdom and Link's Awakening. Though there's another option as well, Game Boy Advance with the Minish Cap, a game that is also waiting for a remake, and one that could make sense as it, just like the Oracle games, have never been remade before. In fact, most haven't even played it, as the release for the Game Boy Advance was around the same time as the launch of the successor, so the Nintendo DS. For the Nintendo Switch 2, it might be the perfect fit, as it is the arguably best Hidemaru Fujibayashi Zelda from his Capcom times, and the only new single-player Zelda title that the Game Boy Advance received. In other words, if the first Capcom Zelda Oracle games are too much work to remake, then the Minish Cap is right there. Unless the 3DS is being brought back into the spotlight so that we can finally, on Nintendo Switch 2, play the 2 new Zeldas that system got 2 years apart, A Link Between Worlds or Triforce Heroes. You don't need to ask me which I believe is the better fit. And yes, we had the trademark renewal, but just like it was pointed out by several, I wouldn't put much weight into it. And I'll be skeptical if this is the main thing, seeing how many better Zelda options we have. That would include a dual pack of the Hero of Time, Ocarina of Time 3D plus Majora's Mask 3D, migrating from the 3DS to Nintendo Switch 2. I definitely would prefer separate proper remakes of these, so that we could have Ultimate Editions, but still, even this would be better than Triforce Heroes being the main event of the 40th anniversary. And while we're on the topic of Galaxy 1+2 dual packs, let's address the Waves and Wolf. The Wind Waker HD plus Twilight Princess HD, now both in upscaled 4K and 60 frames per second. It is absolutely a possibility, but one that lost a lot of its shine after the Wind Waker ended up on GameCube Nintendo Switch 2 Online. The best versions of these two games deserve definitely better than be stuck on the Wii U and come to Nintendo Switch 2. And if they finally show up for the franchise's 40th anniversary, then we're more than willing to wait for an Ocarina of Time remake in 2027, or maybe even the game's 30th anniversary in 2028. And why? Since here we have the best GameCube and Wii generation Zelda games, but it would also show that even 10 years after Twilight Princess HD, Nintendo doesn't forget. At the same time, it is clear that 2026 might be the final chance for these two to come in their enhanced versions on Nintendo Switch 2. Well, not 100% for Twilight Princess, as unlike the Wind Waker, it still isn't on the system and has not been promised for GameCube Switch Online yet for the game's 20th anniversary. Speaking of Switch Online on Nintendo Classics this year, recently Nashville teased that we might see a big Zelda surprise. BS, The Legend of Zelda Ancient Stone Tablets, which never made it out of Japan. And why does this matter? Since Nashville is pointing to that the Satellaview might be added to Nintendo Classics, and have this never-released pseudo-sequel to A Link to the Past, in Japanese Triforce of the Gods, to come out in other regions. Another option that we discussed with Roger's Base was a proper remake of Zelda 1, but using the prototype, physics and chemistry engine of Breath of the Wild that was first showcased by the Zelda team in 2017, so at GDC and the making of video series of that game. And apart from Zelda Maker or a brand new top-down Zelda game, it could be the most direct way of celebrating the 40th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda Famicom Disc release. In fact, we might even see the next system added to Switch Online, the DS with the Wind Waker sequels, the Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. But with all that said, a Zelda Game & Watch Oracle Edition will likely not be seen, though it would be a very cool way of recognizing the 25th anniversary of those two titles. Still, all of this apart from potential new 2D games are a link to the past. And while the linkless Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment could soon get paid DLC after the free updates, it is all about the future. From Zelda 40th to 50th. Well, at first the next open air game, since we want it before the 45th anniversary of the franchise. Recently we got rumors about Rift gameplay mechanics and puzzles involved with this, but truth to be told, we will not know anything, apart from this game being significantly different until the big reveal. And there are signs that it might happen during this anniversary. For one, Tears of the Kingdom turns 3 years on May 12th. Meaning that we now are nearing the point where we can say we are less than 3 years away from the release of the Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive Open Air Zelda. As this game, using the same Breath engine, but potentially different art style and obviously gameplay and new map, must be out by summer 2029. And with it, a reveal is plausible, seeing that we have a new generation and more so its second year come June. Naturally, we had Breath and Tears Switch 2 edition at the same time last year, and I do feel that Nintendo and the Zelda team might wait a little in this year before revealing their biggest ace. At least until the new fiscal year, which starts in April. But the first Nintendo Direct will likely be before this, and thus will more likely just reveal a remake or a different project that will release in 2026 before a June Direct maintains the over 20-year-long tradition of a new 3D Zelda being revealed in what used to be the great E3 month, so June. In fact, we could see a near repetition of what happened in 2019, where Link's Awakening was revealed in the first February Nintendo Direct of that year, to then be joined by an outsourcing of the Zelda license, Cadence of Hyrule, and all building up to the reveal of the next Open Air Zelda as we saw in the E3 2019 Nintendo Direct. So in best case, Ocarina Remake in the first Direct with Ancient Stone Tablets for Switch Online, and then the next brand new 3D Zelda in the return of the June Direct. Reveals that will bring entirely new hype levels for the franchise, and that is exactly what is needed before the first teaser trailer of the Zelda movie and a potential theme park area announcement. A Link to the Past as part of the 40th, but a Zelda to the future looking forward to the 45th and eventually the big 50th of the franchise. But what do you think will end up being the Zelda 40th anniversary games? Sound off in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell. Last but not least, a big thanks to you for watching and to all our patreon.com/commonrealm patrons. Special shoutouts go to Roy Producer, Jonathan, and Heroes, Cheryl, Garrett Hoy, Holly Wolf, and Kintaro. You rock, and please enjoy these awesome videos.